just doing a little bit of work on my rear disc conversion. So this axle is from an MGC, which, as I understand it, is quite similar to one from an MGB V8. And I'm doing a little bit of work because of my disc conversion, which I will try to show you. Let me bring you down. So as you can see, I had a little bit of work done on the hub itself in order for it to accept the disc, which goes on quite nicely. But the thing I was not quite happy with, and you can probably see that here, is the amount of thread being occupied by the wheel nuts. There are those. And yeah, it's not quite, for my taste, it's not quite enough thread. Now these studs are actually, rather than the original, I guess there would have been 1/2 inch UNF Imperial studs, these are actually Mark II Escort wheel studs. So this is an M12 by 1.5, which you can get in various lengths. And I wasn't sure about this, but this there are various standard longer lengths, if you like. This one is 63 millimeters, and what I discovered is you can get this one, which is 75, which, as you can see, is quite a bit longer. So obviously just trying to get the little last finishing touches of this conversion done. I want to, well, you can see I've done 3 of them already, got 2 more to do. Then I better stick it all back together again, complete with its VW Tiguan rear brake caliper, complete with electronic parking brake, and this spacer, which, as you can see, is about 1 inch thick. Anyway, you need to get all that back together so that I can, well, finish this side and then I'll do the other side. So let me put you down for a second. No, actually no, I won't put you down for a second. I've got my tripod here. Alright then, so it appears that the shank on this Ford wheel stud is the same size as the MG one, because it goes, and as you'll see, it goes in the hole really well. But as I say, I want to make for a little bit more thread, and it turns out that this degree of dismantling is all that is required, so I don't need to take the hub off. Using my club hammer, it comes off relatively easily. There we go. And put that in there. Of course, it will tend to tighten up when you do the wheel nuts up. But I might as well get it off to a good start. That's pretty much it. So that is the last, well, this is the last one. So that, as you can see, that's a remarkably good fit, considering it's a different manufacturer's stud. The amount of bopping that was required to make it go in. So this is the last one. That's basically it. So let's remember how it goes on. So the disc goes on thusly. Now this, the PCD, the pitch center diameter of this disc, which is I think a Vauxhall disc, is 120 millimeters, and the PCD of the MG hub is 4 3/4, which is the same as, even though this is an MG C hub, it's got 5 studs on, but it's the same on the other MGs, which only have 4. So it's on those it's 4 times 4 times 4 3/4, whereas this one is 5 times 4 3/4. But the difference between 4 3/4 and 120 millimeters is 0.065 of a millimeter. So with the amount of spare room there is on the holes here, that's plenty. Whew. Okay. There we go. So that's a considerably longer length of wheel stud than it was before. So the caliper is mounted to a bracket which is on the back of the axle flange, which I can probably just about show to you. Yes, here it is. So this bracket, which takes the caliper, is bolted to the back of the axle flange. There we are, that's the axle flange, and the caliper is bolted in, and it works really well. So this is the fixed part of the caliper, and it's all made a lot simpler by the fact that it's threaded in there, which means that my adapter plate around the back just needs to be a plain hole, and I can then screw it together with this. So having got the fixed part attached to the adapter, I can now tighten up with my ratchet ring spanner. So I chose a VW Tiguan electric caliper, basically, so I didn't have to bother with figuring out a handbrake cable for this. I mean, obviously had a handbrake originally, but it was for a drum brake setup, so this was actually easier to figure out. So anyway, here it is. So I just need to get the sliding part of the caliper back on again. Which we'll find out how easy that is. So these alloys are original Gilbern alloys, which have been reconditioned. And I remember when the reconditioners had them, they commented how straight they were. There we go. So just comparing the wheel studs that I've got and I've used, here we have the situation. So here are a couple of the original MG wheel studs, and the shank of that is, I think, it's a 1/2 inch UNF, and the splined shank of that is 12.54, which is 1/2 inch. Maybe it would be more accurate to do the diameter that way. Obviously the splines have an effect on the size. Okay, so 13.1. That must be rolled, making the thing slightly fatter. So the spliny bit is slightly fatter than the main shank. So anyway, that's those. And then what I had in there were these ones. Now these ones are Mark II Escort, which the thread looks a bit smaller, doesn't it? But again, the spline part is, let's do the same thing, 13.04. 13.13, so within 0.1 of a millimetre, the same size between the Ford one and the MG one, which is why they go in the hole very well. Now the actual thread itself looks to be slightly fatter, so obviously this is half or 13 point, yeah, nearest damn it, 12.5, whereas these are, they are slightly thinner. These are actually M12. And by the look of it, that's coming out at 11.71. So it is slightly slimmer, but the shank is a bit fatter, so it goes in the MG hub really, really well. So that's the 63mm stud. And for reference, that is already longer than a standard Ford stud, which is this one. So I'll just measure that. Yeah, so the length is defined as the distance from the base of the shaft to the end. So as you can see, basically 63mm versus a standard Ford stud, which is quite a bit shorter than that. Quite a bit shorter than that. It's about 55. Obviously, I wasn't using that. The reason it has to be longer. The reason it has to be longer is because the all the spacers and the disc and everything else that go on top of the hub. So that's why I needed longer ones. But as I said, the longer ones, which were these 63mm ones here, in fact, you can see there's that's where the nut was threaded onto. As I say, that was a little bit short for my preference, but I discovered these ones, and these ones are 75. So there we are. So that's what's just gone on. That's what was there previously. That was what was there originally, and for reference, that one there is a standard Mark II Escort metric wheel stud. So this one provides plenty of thread, and that's the important thing. Switching to the other side now, and here you can see more clearly my adapter plate, which bolts on the back of the axle flange in there, and the caliper bolts onto these holes here. Another issue is whether in fact having extended the length, in fact because my wheel nuts are blind, in other words there's no hole going right the way through, whether there's actually too long. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. It's alright, so it's 16 threads before it binds up. So as long as there's no more than 16 before it gets tight on the wheel, we should be alright. Anyway, let's try putting these in. So now we have one, 2, 11, 12, 12 and 12 and 3/4, 12 and 3/4 turns, which is plenty considering the nut has about 15 or 16. So let's hope the front brakes do the same type of thing. Yeah, so it looks unfortunately although I can get the shorter stud out, I can't get the longer one in around the back, so I am going to have to take the brakes off again, which I was hoping to avoid. Never mind, there's just not quite enough space behind here, so since we've got 4 studs at the minute, but I can't quite get the new one in there. I'm just wondering whether I can do something simple, but in fact, yeah, that could become a mess. No, I'm going to have to take the disc off, that will be the thing. So anyway, this is my BMW 1 Series based vented disc setup. So we've got another bracket thing going on in the back here, and that's the BMW disc and caliper. But I've got to take that off in order to get the disc off so that I can get the studs in. So I really wish there was a way of avoiding that.